Hello everyone and welcome to this Videos on Frontier video. My name is Jay Wakefield and today we are going to be looking at how to dual boot with Acronis OS Selector. Now we have done this in the past with various other laptop computers, but today we're actually going to do it using Camtasia so that you can get the clearest screen image possible. Well, at least that is the theory. For best results, if you have the internet connection to do it, try and view this video in high definition. I would have put it to 640 by 480, but unfortunately, some of the screens don't actually match up to that resolution, so I'd end up with things going off of the sides. So, what exactly are we going to do? Well, we're going to do one of my more common dual boots, Windows 98 and Windows 2000. And in this video we're going to learn a few skills. For example, we're going to learn how to make both partitions primary. We're going to learn how to use the disk administrator. We're going to learn how to partition using Acronis OS Selector. We're going to learn how to set up bootable operating systems using Acronis OS Selector. And we're going to learn basically how to install Windows 98 and Windows 2000. So, first thing we want to do is to prepare the hard disk. Now, a little about this virtual machine. It's been set up with 256 megs of virtual memory, and, well, when I say virtual memory, I mean 256 megs of RAM has been made available to the guest, not actual virtual memory as in a paging file or anything like that. And it's also been set up with a 40 gigabyte hard drive. What I plan to do is create two equal sized partitions, 20 gig. So, the first thing we want to do is to start up the computer and mount the Acronis OS Selector diskette. For this tutorial we're going to use Acronis OS Selector 5.0 Special Edition. So as you can see, there is a wizard. Now we're just going to click next here and read the README files and what have you. Now, this is quite interesting. It's given me an option to install Acronis OS Selector. How? I don't know. Normally, if you want to install it, what would happen if you try to install it on an empty hard disk with no partitions? It would create a small fat partition to install itself into. What we're going to do, however, is we're going to run the disk administrator. Then we're going to proceed. And that will open the disk administrator, which on the Acronis OS Selector disk is fdisk. Now don't worry about that MBR. It's just one of the many consequences of virtualizing. So, we want to create a new partition. A couple of ways to do this. You can go to Partition and Create. You can hit the Create button on the toolbar, or you can right click on it and select Create. Now, what we're actually going to do is to make the NTFS partition the first one on the drive. Now, please note that everyone advises against this, primarily because the first partition on the drive is usually the primary one. But we can actually set two partitions or more to be primary partitions using Acronis OS Selector. So while the FAT32 partition may be the last one on the drive, it really doesn't matter, because Acronis OS Selector will have made it primary and Windows 98 setup will not be any the wiser. Of course, it will scold us that there are NTFS partitions on the drive that will not be readable in Windows 98, but that's perfectly fine. Anyway, we're going to create an NTFS partition. This is for Windows 2000. However, I am going to format it using the recovery console because I don't fully trust Acronis OS Selector's way of formatting NTFS partitions. I've had problems with it before. Let's just think of this as a placeholder for the time being, even though it is formatted as NTFS. So, 39.9 gigs. Well, what about 20? Well, what about 19? A straight 19 gigs. Or 18.4 gig. Okay, 18. There we go. I can't give up. This will be fine. 20 gigs. Right. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this Windows 2000. My OCD there was playing up, trying to get the partitions the most equal sized. Windows 2000. And then what we're going to do now is create the FAT32 partition. So again, right click on the free space, click create, click FAT32, and then here we need to click the primary button. There we go. Now we can see that both partitions are primary. And we're going to call this one Windows 98. Excellent. So what we need to do now is to commit the changes. But before we do that, let's insert the Windows 2000 disk in the drive. Okay. So we're going to click OK. You have operations pending. Do you want to commit them all before exit? Well, before we do that, let's remove the Acronis OS Selector disk. And we'll click yes. Because we don't need Acronis OS Selector at the moment. We'll come back to it once Windows 2000 is installed. Now it'll say NTLDR is missing, press Ctrl Alt Delete to restart. Well, we're going to restart the computer as the Windows 2000 disk is in the drive. And now it's been detected. Please ensure your computer is set to boot from the CD-ROM drive, otherwise this won't work. Now, as I said before, I want to format the partition using Windows 2000. So, what we're going to do is we're going to select R to repair a Windows 2000 installation, and then C to go to the recovery console. And then what we're going to do, format C:/Q. Warning, all data on non-removable disk drive C will be lost. Proceed with format? Yes. Now the reason we've done this is because Windows 2000 setup will format the drive for you. But unlike Windows XP, it will not do a quick format. You'll have to sit there while it does a full format. And if you want to do that, that is fine. But if you want a way of doing it quickly, then using the recovery console is the quickest way to do it. Setup is starting Windows 2000. There we go. Now we can actually begin to install it. So we'll set up Windows 2000 now by pressing Enter. Press F8 to agree with the licensing agreement. And we're going to install it to the C drive. And leave the current file system intact. Now, I would always format if you're going to do a clean install of Windows 2000. You don't want any files messing up the hard drive. Same with Windows 98, except for, as you guys know, I like to copy all the files over to Windows 98. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks, because we will have Windows 2000 installed first. I'll be able to show you guys a couple of tricks. I'll come back once we're on the GUI portion of setup. Okay, so now the text portion of setup has ended. So what will happen is you can just ignore that, press any key to boot from CD prompt. Windows 2000 is now going to load. There you go, really quite exciting. For me, it was the first time I used Windows 2000. It was completely different to any version of Windows I'd used before. Here we go. So it's a regular Windows 2000 setup from here on in. What I'll do is I'll let it detect the hardware, and I will come back to you once it starts, obviously. I'm just going to click next. If you don't click next there, it will do it auto-magically. Okay, so now we're going to need to select the language. If you live in America, you can basically just leave all this alone. I don't, so I actually have to change the system locale. Here we go. So J Wakefield. And now for the product key, let's name this system and type in a password. And then we need to set the time zone. Please wait while Windows installs networking components. Ah, yeah. Please wait a minute. Windows is busy. Oh, you young'uns. You don't have like things done yesterday. Oh, in my day we learned about patience. Now, sometimes you may or may not get this screen. You'll get it if Windows has auto-magically detected your network card. If not, you won't get it. Most people will just need to click on, just let it use typical settings. But if you have a particular network infrastructure that you wish to connect to, you probably might want to use custom settings and make the changes here. This computer will not be a member of a domain, so we'll just put it as a member of work group. And here we are. Now Windows 2000 is going to install the networking component, which won't take too long. Obviously it's a lot quicker on here because it's a virtual CD rather than an actual CD. And no, I don't believe it would be a good idea to try and install Windows 2000 from a flash drive, because while I'm sure that it's entirely possible to do such a thing, I don't think any computer that supports USB booting is suitable for Windows 2000. Again, it most likely probably run, but yeah. So these are the last 4 bits of Windows 2000 setup, installing start menu items, and it's not like Windows 98 where it just installs the shortcuts. It means it's actually installing the programs at this point. This will take a wee bit longer, registering components, so it's working on files, doing stuff that it has to do. But again, because it's a virtual machine, it's going to do it quite quickly. Especially when you think it's of the specs of the machine, so yeah. So I have discussed this in great detail before, but for anyone still wondering why you would want to dual boot Windows 98 and Windows 2000, well, let me put it to you this way. If you have an older computer, let's say a Pentium 3, something like a 1 GHz model, a lot of people like to keep old computers to play older games, run older software, that sort of thing. Now, for gaming, while some games will work on Windows 2000, not all of them will. But for those that do work on Windows 2000, maybe the user would like the extra security. And Windows 2000 supports some of the newer technologies out of the box. So it's easier, for example, to install a wireless adapter and get online than maybe it is on Windows 98. So by dual booting Windows 98 and Windows 2000, it means your computer has a compatibility for older software when it's needed, but the security and the stability of Windows 2000 when that's needed. Obviously, you can only run one version of Windows at a time, but you just use them as you need them. And this is why I've put together this lesson on dual booting Windows 98 and Windows 2000 and using Acronis OS Selector. Okay, so this is nearly done. It's just going to save the settings now, and then it will remove any temporary files used. I mean, that should not take too long to remove the temporary files. Come on. Windows 2000 can take longer to install than Windows 98 because it is a much bigger operating system, probably about twice the size. On hard disk, that is. Oh, here we go. Completing the Windows 2000 setup wizard. Now we can take the CD out of the drive. It says you have successfully completed Windows 2000 setup. If you have a CD in your drive, remove it. Then to restart your computer, click Finish. Now, I'm not going to go through the rigmarole in this video of installing drivers and applications and what have you, because that's not what this video is about. Of course, if this was one of my laptops or something, I probably would do, but this is a virtual machine. But I'm going to show you a wee trick once I've installed Acronis. Okay, so we want to use a password. I think I will install the VM virtual PC editions just to make Windows 2000 run real good. Obviously it will take a wee bit of time the first time you start Windows 2000 to get to the desktop. I remember using Windows 2000 for the first time. I was really quite excited about some of the stuff that it had. the shadow under the mouse pointer, the faded menus, the fact that it was built on Windows NT and therefore a lot more stable. I really did like it. So, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start VM Edition setup. It's always nice to have drivers installed. And yes, it has gone into 256 color mode, but we can quite easily change that. And I'll change the Windows standard theme so the colours look proper, and we'll change it up to 800 by 600 pixels. There we go, and that's Windows 2000 installed. So now we want to install Windows 98, and to do this we want to reuse the Acronis OS Selector drive. Well, the disk. There we go. So now we restart the computer. And what we're going to do now is actually install Acronis OS Selector. There we go. So now we need to click on Next. Next again, yes. And then we can actually go and install Acronis OS Selector. Now Acronis OS Selector can only be installed on FAT or FAT32 partitions. So it will install itself on the Windows 98 partition. Acronis OS Selector has been installed successfully. Remember to remove the installation media, because if you don't, it'll just boot back into setup. There we go. Would you like to create an ASP Linux network installation configuration? It will appear in OS Selector boot menu, and it will allow you to start ASP Linux network installation by booting it. Well, I am aware that Linux is a superior operating system, but I don't have an ASP Linux network boot disk thingy. Ah, okay, so now it's started, and it's detected on a 20 gig NTFS partition. Choose the operating system it contains: Windows NT 3.51, Windows NT 4.0, Windows 2000, Windows XP Professional Edition, or Windows XP Home Edition, or no operating system at all. Well, it contains Windows 2000, so I'm going to select that and click OK. This doesn't always work, and sometimes you actually have to have it manually go and detect the operating system. Let's see if it does work. In this case, it is actually working absolutely fine. So we have Acronis OS Selector installed. Now what I will need to advise you to do is have a Windows 98 boot floppy handy, and I'll explain why once we're back in Acronis OS Selector. For the time being, no, we're just going to restart the computer. Come on. Shut down. Please wait, your government is shutting down. Here. Okay, so now we're back in OS Selector, or we are now. Now, I said I wanted to use a Windows 98 boot floppy. There's a good reason for this. Acronis OS Selector has an option to boot from floppy drive A, and the reason I want to use this particular option is because that will make doubly sure that the Windows 98 boot floppy actually recognizes the fact that the FAT32 partition is primary. Sometimes it doesn't always work if you boot to floppy disk straight from your computer, or at least straight from your computer's BIOS. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert the Windows 98 boot disk, as I've just done, and then click to boot from the floppy disk. Excellent. Now, once again, what we're going to do is we're actually going to reformat the hard disk drive. Just to make sure it's a Windows formatted FAT32 partition, not an Acronis formatted one. Never fully trust its idea of what a file system is. Hopefully though, it should still make it a primary partition. What we're going to do then is we're going to go back into Windows 2000 because I want to show you a wee trick. And remember, I've used a /S switch to make the partition bootable. If you wanted to quick format the hard drive, that wouldn't have been a problem. /Q will do it for you. System transferred. Excellent. Now, what we're going to do is reboot and go into OS Selector. Oh no! Oh noes! Look what I've done! I've deleted Acronis OS Selector. Okay, let's just forget that I did that, okay? We'll have to reinstall it now. I wasn't supposed to do that. That's okay though. It's not going to be too much of a problem reinstalling Acronis. Select Windows 2000. And you'll notice as well, it's found MS-DOS 7.1 English. Well, that will let you boot into the now bootable FAT32 partition. Isn't that clever? But we want to go into Windows 2000. There we go. And while we're doing this, let's get the Windows 98 CD inserted. There we go. Come on, Windows. Now that Windows 2000 has been loaded, I could quite easily get on the internet and order up some deep fried potatoes. So what we're going to do is copy the contents of the Windows of the Win98 folder, and we're going to make a folder called Windows. In this folder, we're going to make a folder called Options. And in that folder, we're going to make a folder called Cabs. But Jay, I hear you cry, we could have done this in the command prompt. Well, it's actually quicker and easier to do it within Windows itself. And if you wanted any drivers copying, it's very easy to do that as well. So now we can get rid of the Windows 98 CD and then restart the computer yet again. Now, we've formatted the hard drive. I want to check that the FAT32 partition is still primary. So we're going to go into Disk Administrator. So we could either use it by going to Tools/Disk Administrator, clicking on the Disk Administrator icon on the toolbar, or hitting Control D. And as you can see, it is a primary partition. Excellent, that all checks out. And we're going to boot into DOS 7.1. Now, beware that if you're trying to type backslash on a UK keyboard, this bare bones DOS environment is actually in the American format. So you'll have to hit the hash key in order to be able to do this, in order to be able to get a backslash. Anyway, Windows 98 setup. If we click continue, it'll set up, well, it'll initialize setup as it usually does. Looks like an install shield initializer. Very familiar. Now, what is this? Caution! Setup detection notice. Caution! SU0015. Setup has detected a Windows NT file system partition on your hard disk. Files on this partition will not be available when you use Windows 98. For more information, see setup.txt on setup disk 1 or the Windows 98 compact disk. That's fine. We'll click continue. C:\Windows.000. No thank you. I'm going to put it into C Windows. Caution! The directory C:\Windows already exists. If you continue, files in this directory may be overwritten. Do you wish to continue with the specified directory? Yay! Yes, I do. Now it's a way to prepare the directory. And from here on in, it's just regular Windows 98-edness. So I'm going to select a custom install loads of crap that I don't need, apart from internet connection sharing. And again, we want to set it to workgroup, and I want to set the keyboard layout to British and regional settings to British. Establishing my location, United Kingdom. No, I do not wish to create a startup disk, and click OK. Now, if you're needing to create a Windows 98 boot disk but haven't got an active Windows 98 installation, you can go to www.bootdisk.com and download a self-writing image that will actually write the image to the floppy disk. If you don't have a floppy drive, you can easily buy a USB one. If you don't have a USB port, then why does your computer not have a floppy drive? Oh wait, you could be using a tablet. Don't do this on a tablet. Do this on a desktop or laptop. Anyway, I'll join you once Windows 98 has copied all the files. So Windows 98 is about installed. Well, the first part of setup is completed at least. Now, what you'll find is Acronis OS Selector may not fire. However, that's okay. It's not overwritten it. What has merely happened is Acronis OS Selector has temporarily deactivated itself while Windows installed. It will be reactivated once Windows has fully installed. Let's type in my name. Put in a wee product key and click finish here. And now Windows 98 is now initializing its driver database. Nice. So what will happen is it will do some hardware detection, restart, do a wee bit more, and then we'll be on to the last phase of setup, which actually is a wee bit quicker than Windows 2000's last phase of setup. I don't know what it is. There's something exciting about a freshly installed version of Windows. All nice. It doesn't matter which version of Windows it is. It kind of feels new. You know, a fresh install of Windows. It just kind of feels really nice and new. Okay, so that's Windows 98 now setting up your hardware devices. Oh, okay. Maybe it's going to do the last phase of setup now. On the 2001 custom build, it always restarted. So we're just going to reset the time zone. Updating shortcuts, Windows help, MS-DOS program settings, tuning up applications start. Updating system settings. This will just take a few minutes. On a virtual machine, it shouldn't take too long at all. Whoops, there we go. Windows 98 setup is nearly finished with the wee drum thing. Bish, 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 poof, poof. Setup needs to restart your computer to continue. Your computer will automatically restart in 15 seconds or when you click Restart Now. Okay, so in this case, OS Selector has not automatically restarted itself. Seems that Windows 98 has actually overwritten it. But that's okay too, because it is very, very easy to actually get it back up and running. So what we need to do is we need to get the Acronis OS Selector diskette. Taking a wee while, this. Usual new hardware found, default monitor. Before we do anything, let's install or update the virtual machine add-ons. Oops. Virtual PC there, how to sound card driver really good. Okay, now this will restart in order to finish off the virtual machine additions, but the Acronis OS Selector disk is in the drive, so it's now booted into that. Now, to reactivate OS Selector, we need to click Next, accept the license agreement, and then what we can do is click Activate. Click Next, and then click Proceed. And it says, Acronis OS Selector has been activated successfully. Remember to remove the installation media. And now it's detected Windows 98. However, it's still got MS-DOS 7.1, English. We don't need that anymore, and in fact, it could be detrimental to the computer's operation to have it. Might not be, but it could be. But to make things simple, we're going to delete it. So this time we're going to need to go into Setup. So let's go to Tools and Setup. And we can right click on MS-DOS 7.1 English and then delete. This is the only configuration of the operating system. If you delete it, the operating system will be deleted too. Do you wish to delete this configuration and operating system? Yes. Information about this operating system will be deleted! It will be impossible to boot this operating system from Acronis OS Selector. Do you wish to delete this operating system? Yes. Now, while we're in here, let's have some fun. So, what we want to do is change the icon of Windows 2000. Let's make it red. And let's call it Windows 2000 Professional. There we go. Now while we're doing that, we could change the colour of the DOS icon in Windows 98. And let's have a green boot disk. But the customization doesn't end there. You can actually, let's commit these changes. Nope, we can't do that just yet. We can actually change how Acronis OS Selector itself looks. So let's go to View and then Options. We can tell it that we don't want it to be displayed, that it boots the default configuration. We can tell it we want a timeout. We can tell it we want it to remember the last booted configuration and to check for boot viruses. But here's the best bit. We can change how it looks. Text mode, for example. Let's have a look at this. That takes me back. I've got pseudo graphics. That's quite often the configuration used on older systems. My Packard Bell Legend 406 CD, for example. Or we can have Visa, just regular Visa. Kind of looks like pseudo graphics, but not really. Actually looks a bit more refined. And then we can have the usual Visa in 640 by 400, 640 by 480, 800 by 600, 1024 by 768, or 1280 by 1024. Let's click it to that, 640 by 480. And then it's got its old Windows XP-esque look back. You can also change the color scheme. So you've got Ocean Wave, Windows Classic, still kind of looks like XP, or you have Windows Modern. And if you want to change the default operating system, right click and select Set as Default. But for now we want to go into Windows 98. Virtual machine editions have been installed. So let's do what we did with Windows 2000. We'll change it to 800 by 600, 32-bit color. And while you can do it without restarting the computer, the colors always look better in Windows 9X if you do restart after changing the color depth. Obviously, if you just want to play a game, you don't necessarily have to do it. Just depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends what mood I'm feeling, what I'm doing with the machine. And yes, computer games, older computer games that insist that you be in 256 color mode without actually doing it automatically, they are annoying. And here we are. Windows 98 has been successfully installed, as has Windows 2000. Now you have it, a dual boot system. And the best thing about having the NTFS partition at the beginning of the drive is it's unreadable to Windows 98. So Windows 2000 will see it as a C drive. So Windows will be installed in the C drive, whereas Windows 98 will see the FAT32 partition again as the C drive. Therefore, Windows being installed on the C drive, which does, let's face it, make things easier for some applications. And it makes the whole thing look a lot tidier. But as you can tell, we can see the Windows 98 partition and the Windows 2000 partition. Now, here's a wee nugget of information. If we display all files and go to boot with, what you find is the Windows 98 files have been tucked away. And that basically means that apart from being able to start Windows 98 screensavers, it basically means that whatever you do, as long as you've got the files remained hidden, apart from reformatting the hard drive obviously, it basically means all the files have been placed out of harm's way. And isn't that something to be reassured? Isn't that something that's reassuring? So there you have it. This has been a wee video on how to use Acronis OS Selector to set up a Windows 98 and Windows 2000 dual boot. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please feel free to subscribe. If you like the channel and what we do, please feel free to like the Facebook page. Both URLs will follow. But apart from that, I hope you will all join me for my next video. Thank you for watching.